So this presentation is based on a publication that I did with some colleagues, Dorothy Wallace, Melody Hesledge, and Kate Chafin. And it came about because I graduated with my master's degree in 2003 and returned to college to get my PhD in 2019. So in those years, in those 16 years gaps, I came back expecting our higher education systems to be a little bit further along with accessibility and inclusivity. And so I have had hearing loss my whole life. And in the time between my master's and my PhD, I lost all of my hearing. So am now completely deaf. And so when I returned to get my PhD, the very first thing I did was work with students with disability services. I knew from my previous experience that that was a resource. However, and they're wonderful. Our students with disability services here on campus are phenomenal. But I was a little disappointed at how often I would have to ask for an accommodation versus having it naturally built into our systems. And so in talking with some of my mentors about that, they pretty much said, publish it. If you want to do something about it, publish it. So we did. We published it. And so this presentation is based on part of that presentation, and the citation is right there for you. So for what we're going to cover today is universal design for learning and closed captions, different platforms that we can use as instructors, additional applications for our captions, and then of course limitations. So I wanted to share this quote because I love it and I identify it very much, identify with it. That from Elaine Ostroff, that design has the power to make us feel competent or incompetent. It has the power to include or exclude us. And as a clinical social worker, very much I felt that in my professional spaces. When I started attending academic conferences, COVID hit and everybody put a mask on and nobody would caption their presentations. So not only am I coming to a situation that already has inequity for me as a person with hearing loss, but now people have extra barriers. They're now wearing a mask. So I cannot see their faces, and they're presenting probably really incredible information that they've worked really hard to gather. But in the dissemination of that, I could not access it. So just walking into a conference, I was automatically excluded because I was not a hearing person. And our classroom spaces have the ability to do that with our students, right? To help somebody feel competent or to help them or to cause them to feel incompetent. And it is pretty clear that those with disabilities are less likely to engage in educational spaces and in professional spaces, and they will leave or walk away or not necessarily advocate for themselves. Some will, but some will never disclose that they have a disability or a struggle. So us being able to increase our design is important for multiple people. So for universal design, we can't talk about it without talking about ableism, right? That this idea that there's a perfect species typical standard out there. And classrooms and systems who operate with this ableist framework, we treat disability as an afterthought. So we don't build it into our design naturally. We legally have to provide accommodation, and we're willing to provide accommodation, but we tack it on as this afterthought instead of building it into our curriculum initially. So, and what that does is it impacts our students, right? Especially those who are not receiving accommodations again. And there are actually multiple people, not just students with disability, there are multiple people who actually benefit when you intentionally design a course to be inclusive. So I want to introduce to you Ronald Mace. He contracted polio in his childhood and became a wheelchair user, very young age. In the 1960s, he attended North Carolina University and he studied architecture, but his college classes were upstairs. Now, many people with disability, if they could not access the upstairs, wouldn't attend college or would change their major to a major that was on the main level. But Ronald did not. He had his classmates and friends carry him up and down the stairs to be able to attend his classes, put him in his chairs, pick him up. On top of that, the restrooms were not accessible to a wheelchair. He had to have people take him into the restroom and help remove him. Multiple ways he had to rely on other people in order to receive his education, but he did it, he completed it. And with his work as an architect, started designing buildings with this concept of universal design, and he coined this term. So it's a building design that intentionally plans for people of all abilities and ages. And Ronald Mace argued that it doesn't have to be expensive or unattractive. You can do simple, attractive fixes to help spaces be inclusive for all abilities and all ages. And those design was for universal design was intentionally for our built environment, with our human-made spaces, right? The spaces in which people interact with on a daily basis. And we know that universal design acknowledges that this traditional built environment has multiple barriers. There are multiple barriers for people of different abilities. And we want to decrease those barriers in our design. So having this design principle in architecture allows our buildings to be different. However, that's also been adapted for universal design for learning, which is most applicable to us, right, as instructors. Here's a quick example of a way that we can change a design to make it not be very costly, but to increase who can use it. We think of a chalkboard, and traditionally chalkboards are for people who are of average height, who have full use of their legs, right? So I'm 5'6", I can use a chalkboard without a problem. And if you look at this picture on the left, that the person in the middle, who's the tallest, can reach the chalkboard okay. The person who's a little bit shorter struggles, but can still reach the chalkboard a little bit. But then you have a person who does not have use of their legs, who's in an assistive sitting device and cannot even reach the chalkboard at all. So we allow accommodations in our classroom. And so if these were our students, we would put ramps in. If we asked for them to use the chalkboard in our classroom, we would put these ramps in so that they could then reach the chalkboard. Universal design says, no, let's create the chalkboards so that they're lower and that we expand them so that multiple people of all abilities can use the chalkboard. So this kind of principle is what we try to implement with universal design for learning, and not just our physical classroom structure, but the way that we teach, the way that we lecture, the way that we look at our assignments, the way that we provide information. So universal design for learning works across discipline. It's well known to increase student performance, whether or not there is a disability for that student. It also reduces achievement gaps, which is definitely a plus, right? We want to reduce achievement gaps for students who have disabilities. And students feel seen for their individual needs when we can increase the universal design. So there's three basic principles that universal design for learning has. This recognition networks is the what of learning. The area that's shaded blue with the brain is the strategic networks, the how of learning, and then the affective networks, the why of learning. And we're going to focus on the first, recognition networks, which is the what of learning. How we gather facts and how we categorize what we see and hear and read, that this information that's coming into our brain, that it needs to be presented in multiple different ways. One way that we can increase accessibility in our classroom And by following this design principle to provide multiple means of representation is to add captions. So closed captions make a big difference for multiple people. Those captions is the text boxes, right, that you see on your screen when you enable it, that gives a text visual version of what somebody is saying in an auditory means. It was developed for those who have hearing loss, and those who have hearing loss very much rely on closed captioning for social media, for entertainment, and classroom learning. Hearing loss is one of the most prevalent causes of disability worldwide, with an estimated annual cost of over $750 billion. Approximately 23% of Americans live with some degree of hearing loss. That's a really high percentage of people who have some degree of hearing loss. And hearing loss is on a spectrum from mild to profound. And each level of that spectrum is going to have a different need. So you can't say two people with hearing loss have the same needs. They don't, because the spectrum is different on how much they have a hearing loss, how much they're able to navigate the hearing world. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But we do know that even with a very mild hearing loss, it can interrupt speech so that people struggle with speech, especially as you introduce background noise. Then people's ability to hear can decrease. So those with hearing loss are very much reliant on all the visual cues that they can take in to be able to navigate their spaces, so that when their hearing declines or background noise is introduced, or they're farther away from the speaker, or they're not able to hear anything at all, or they don't have an interpreter present, they're going to rely on all of the visual cues that they can to be able to try to take in the information, the critical, important information that they need to take in. With hearing loss, there's stigma still associated with it. So there are many people who have been diagnosed with hearing loss who don't disclose it, who don't tell people that they have hearing loss. There are also multiple people who suspect that they have hearing loss, but they don't want to go find out if they do or not. And then there's people who are going along that don't even know that they have hearing loss. And I work very closely with audiologists. My research is very closely aligned with audiology. And they were just telling me how much their caseload has increased since COVID, because people did not recognize until masking took place that they were not hearing perfectly. And so it increased the number of people who sought audiological services. So multiple people that you're going to come across on a regular basis have hearing loss. I'm not going to be the first person you come across today that has hearing loss. There are multiple people that have hearing loss, but you're not always going to know it. People with hearing loss are excellent fakers. We can pretend through a whole entire conversation and an entire lecture that we're following along when we don't know what's happening. But captioning doesn't just help those who have hearing loss. Here are some of the other individuals who benefit from the use of captions: children who are learning to read, individuals with learning disabilities, those who struggle with focus, like with ADHD, for example, also can benefit. It's well known that those who are learning English as a second language, or whose English is not a first language for them, also benefit. And then even for students whose English language is their primary language and don't have disabilities, it still benefits if when they look at the conditions and they test the conditions for typical students with having captions in their class materials and then not having captions in their class materials, that students across the board are able to increase their comprehension and focus of the college materials, of the classroom materials. This is an example of a universal design principle. by increasing accessibility of adding captions, it's actually multiple people across the board that can benefit from captions. So here's how to add it. I am teaching people pretty much every single day how to add captions to their platforms because I go about sharing this message constantly. So here are the examples of how you can add captioning. And of course, can share this presentation with anybody who needs it because I'll be going through it fairly quickly. For live presentations that you're giving, as you've noticed, my PowerPoint is captioned, and this captioning I leave on in all that I do. So when I teach my class, right now I have an in-person class, and we have it's 27 students, not a ton of students. The classroom is structured a little odd, so it's long, and there are two screens. One large screen is behind me on the right, one large screen is behind me on the left. I caption everything, no matter what I do, no matter who asked for it. And my students just did a mid-semester course evaluation. And the comments that I got back on, do you have any suggestions or any comments for your instructor? There were 8 out of the 15 people who had submitted that evaluation. 8 of them said, I love the captions. The captions are so helpful. I'm so grateful for the captions. I wish all my classes had captions. Only one of those individuals has a hearing loss, but all the rest have benefit from that. So anyway, so here is the way that you do it on PowerPoint from your slideshow, which is arrow number 1 here. When you click on that, there's this option to always use subtitles, and you just check that box. And then all you do is play. That's the only thing you have to do for PowerPoint. And then when you start your PowerPoint, you automatically have captions. Google Slides also has this ability to do automatic captioning. So you just go into the view feature and then the present feature, and then this box you'll see, and you click on that and click on captions. Prezi, unfortunately, cannot do live captioning. However, you can record a Prezi presentation, and then you can add captions in the admin page, or you can run it through a different app like Canvas Studio or YouTube. So you can have the recording of a Prezi have captions, but you can't do live, unfortunately. Hopefully they will change that at some point soon. But I'm also surprised at the number of people who aren't sure how to caption their Zoom screen. Now this screen, this current Zoom is captioned. So all you have to do, if you wanted to utilize the caption feature in this Zoom's room right now, you would just click the CC button, right? But if you're not sure how to set it up for your Zoom, this is what you do. You don't go through your app, your desktop app for Zoom. You need to open Zoom through your web browser. This is the easiest way to add it to your Zoom. So when you go into Google and then type in UTK Zoom, and when it comes up and you enter in your password and all of that, and you open up your Zoom, you go to the left-hand side and the settings, and then you have to scroll almost all through the settings. A lot of settings comes up. Scroll all the way to almost to the bottom until you see the caption feature, and then you just toggle them on. And this will allow the people who come into your Zoom rooms to be able to turn their captions on and off depending on their need. Very important feature to utilize. And the benefit of this is that they can, if they don't want the captions to be on, they don't have to have them. But for those who do, they can use it, and it doesn't cause any harm, of course, for those who don't want them. What about for previously recorded video, though? So Canvas Studio is what I use the most often. So when you open up Canvas, and you, on the left-hand side is all these features for you, your account, dashboard, all of this. Canvas Studio works really, really well. So when you open up Canvas Studio, I don't have individual thumbnails for this, I apologize, but if you open up Canvas Studio and you download the video you want, And this can work for a video you want from YouTube, for example, that's not captioned. It works for my classes, when I do a pre-recorded presentation for my asynchronous classes, I record my presentation, and next to it, or my visual PowerPoint presentation, next to it, I have my phone recording an audio podcast at the same time. That way, my students who are working 3 jobs and listening to the lecture as they're driving from job to job, or they're a parent and they're on the soccer field trying to listen to their lecture and don't have a lot of bandwidth, those who struggle to afford a high quality internet bandwidth can have the same lecture but in an audio format, but I caption those. And so I do all of this the same way, going through Canvas Studio. So once you download anything that you want have captions added to, you click on the caption tab, and then which language is spoken, English, usually in our case. And then you click on request, and then it starts to work, and it takes some time to do it. After that process has been finished, you'll click on review and publish, and then you can look at the captions and you can alter them or change them. If you don't like the way the automatic captioner listed those captions, you can make changes to them if they're incorrect. And when they're ready, you just click on publish. And from now on, any place you put that video in any of your classes, anywhere you insert it in your modules or anywhere else in Canvas, the students will have an option to turn the captioning on and off. Another way you can add captions to a recorded video that does not have captions on it is you can go to YouTube. This of course shows you just how if something in YouTube does have captions, you'll see this little white CC button. It's white. If it doesn't have captions, it's grayed out. So if you're using a video or having your students access a video that's on YouTube, trying to figure out if it has captions or not is really easy. If it's whited out, it has captions, they have access to it. But if not, or if you want to add captions to one of your own recordings, you can do it through YouTube, and there's several options to do that. You do have to sign in to a YouTube account. And then from the left menu, you sign into YouTube Studio. From the left menu, select subtitles, add the video that you'd like to edit, add the language. Under subtitles, click add. So multiple ways that you can add these captions to it. So here's just a couple of additional applications. There's multiple ways to be able to use captions, and captions are free. We can use all of these systems for free. And it has so much benefit. However, we don't have to use them just for lectures. We can also use them for our conferences. So when you go and present at your scholarly conferences or your community presentations, or you are sharing this great research you do or this great teaching method that you're able to accomplish in the classroom, regardless of where you are, having that caption button turned on will not just benefit your students, it will benefit the other researchers who are listening to your research, or your community members who are wanting to understand the intervention you're doing. You can use it in your meetings, in your faculty meetings, in your coalition meetings, all the different things that we do on a daily basis. You can also have the benefit of captions for those. If for some reason the captions aren't working, or the instructor just won't turn the captions on, or the presenter just won't, which I have come across situations and just people won't do it. There are backup methods, and I share this so that you can share this with your students. You can download an app. Our phones have multiple apps that will do individual captioning, individual transcribing. The one that I use the most is called Otter AI, which is this one right here. And I use it probably on a daily basis. So I will use it in my doctor's office because the people are still masked, but even if they're not, I'm spending so much effort hearing and listening. I know I'm not comprehending everything that's being said. And I want to be able to go back and look and read what was said. And Otter AI keeps it transcribed so that you can go back and look at your notes after. I use it at my children's performances when I'm going to their band concerts, and at the beginning when they're speaking about the music and it's a big auditorium and I have no idea what they're saying, I use it so that I can understand what they're saying about the music that's going to be performed. There's just a lot of different ways that we can use captioning and help increase inclusivity. But also, I would like to share the message that even if you're hearing and you don't need any of this, you downloading these apps on your phone, and if the person you're talking to is struggling to hear you, why not open up your app and say, I really want you to hear what I'm saying. Here's a way to do it. So our conversation is, both parties are responsible for our conversation, and increasing inclusivity means we all take on the responsibility of clearly communicating, not just relying on the person with the hearing loss or the person with ADHD or the person in the wheelchair to do all the work. We also are doing the work to make sure our communication is clear and people are accessing what they need from us. Here's another way that we can use captions. So I'm sure you've seen this rise of social media, all these videos on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. And a lot of these social media platforms are now used in assignments that we give to our students. These videos can easily be run through apps to add captioning. So I would encourage you to encourage your students, if they're creating a video for your class, that you ask them to run it through the captioning apps before they present that video to class, that we just automatically start adding captions to everything we're doing throughout our process and our instruction. So my opinion is that we need to add captions to everything, because closed captions can benefit just about everyone. But of course, we have to talk about a couple of limitations, right? Captions that are generated through automatic intelligence are not perfect. They are not going to be perfect. Sometimes words will get thrown in there that have nothing to do with what is said. But overall, it still is really powerful and can work really well. Captions do not take the place of legal accommodation. So if somebody is working with students with disabilities and they need a transcriber, you have to allow them that transcriber, even if you caption everything. Or if they want an ASL interpreter, yes, we want the ASL interpreter there. So captions cannot take the place of legal accommodation, of course. And then some captioning apps and platforms are very reliant on a strong bandwidth. And so if you don't have that strong bandwidth, then they might not work as well. So those are some limitations. So I've noticed that there is some chat, but I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see your faces, because I rely on visual cues to be able to hear and to see. So I would love to answer any questions you have, of course, but let me look at just the chat to see if there's anything I need to answer in here. Yes, the one with the fence is used most often, but I find that one a little less applicable to our classroom spaces, because none of us are watching a soccer game in class, unfortunately, right? But we're using our chalkboards. Show the caption apps again at the end of the presentation. Yeah, you bet. So the individual ones that you put on your phone, is that what you were asking for, Chris?
Yes, please.
Yes.
I had stepped away from my desk and I heard you talking about it, so I didn't see.
Yeah, you bet. Let me go back to that. Oh, the sun just got really bright. So they Otter AI, Transcribe, Noted, and Live Transcribe are just 4 of many. Some of these are just for iPhone, some of these are just for Androids. A lot of them are across platforms that you can use. So if you do a search on your app for captioning, what often comes up is how to caption videos for TikTok users. So you have to look for like the transcribing, which is different than trying to transcribe a video.
Yeah, that's why I had to ask for you to show it again, because I got all this stuff that I don't want.
Yeah. Yeah, how to do the TikToks, which you might not do very much.
I'm not a TikTok person.
I know. I know. So are there any questions that I can answer?
I was curious from a user perspective. We use Panopto quite a bit for automatic transcribing. Do you have an opinion in terms of Panopto versus the Canvas Studio in terms of what seems to be more accurate?
Oh, that's a really good question. UT has actually encouraged me to use Panopto more than Canvas Studio, but I've never made the switch because I just got so used to Canvas Studio. So I have never used Panopto, but from what I understand, it's at least equal. What's been your experience with it?
That is what I understand, but I just was curious from just someone who uses it or experiences it a little bit more often. So I'm cautious about making any large claims on the automatic transcribing, but it seems to be pretty good. It certainly it's come a long way in the last 5 years, I would say.
Even in the last year, to be honest, it has
Yeah.
come a long way. I think out of all the ones I've mentioned, my favorite is PowerPoint. I feel like PowerPoint has been the most accurate out of all. In some of the apps you have to pay for, of course, and you pay for the accuracy. So if you want a really accurate transcription, you have to pay more for it, which is
Right.
really unfortunate because the technology is there and the technology is widespread now. But PowerPoint is really, really effective.
Good old PowerPoint, you know. Sometimes educators are kind of down on PowerPoint, but here we go. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
had one quick thing. Hi. I just wanted to throw out a quick suggestion for those that may be like for pre-recording your presentations and using Zoom or using other programs. The auto transcribe, if you end up using that, I do suggest that you also watch your video first with the sound off. Because often hearing people will tend to watch like their own video and be like, oh yeah, no, everything's great, everything sounds perfect. But it's because you're relying on your hearing as well as being able to watch the captions. And so just by looking at the captions itself, you're not looking at it, you're actually being able to see it more accurately. And because a lot of times the auto captions will look at things phonetically. I do have a lot of classmates that will say, oh no, the captions are great. And I'm like, no, watch them. And she actually turned the sound off and realized, oh, that there are a lot of things that were either spelled incorrectly and ended up being different terms. And so that's just what I've given a lot of people that helpful hint, because a lot of times the auto transcribe can be very frustrating if you're not aware of it. So that's just been my experience also as a deaf person.
And I think that's why we can't say captions replace transcription from a live person, right? So if a person needs an accommodation like CART or live transcribe, it's a human doing it. And so they're phonetically more accurate. and it's going to be better quality. So you're right on. Again, it's automatic, it's through robots, right? It's through artificial intelligence. So some of those words are quite ridiculous what comes up with, and it can change the context of a really important topic or discussion, which can negatively influence how a person does in your class. But overall, they're still better to have in general, right? Than to not have, because the more we can have that visual information, the better. Catherine, I wanted to ask you about your comment here. You found captions on your own in Zoom. So I have been on this mission to have every single person at UT add Zooms to their, or add captioning to their Zoom as a feature. It's been a little bit of an uphill battle, to be honest, because I think that what we don't know, we don't do, right? Or we don't think about. And so, so I did have a slide, I don't know if you saw it, about how to add captions to Zoom. Did you see that slide? You did? Yeah.
Yes, I did.
So I will attend meetings and conference presentations and instructional things early, and I will go and ask the presenters to turn on their captions. Most will. There've been a few that have told me no, but most will and have thanked me. And they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you could do that, right? And then I'll say, please leave it on and do this for the rest of your life. Just leave it on. But if I can't get to a meeting early or find who's presenting, or then I have that as a barrier, right? So the more people who use captions, the further it spreads, the more people will say, wait, how did you do that? And then you can share that information with others so that it increases.
I wanted to, I guess it's not really a question, but kind of a comment. But I do agree with you. During COVID, I knew I had hearing loss, but I did not realize how much I depended on lips until everybody was wearing masks. And that shed some light on even just my slight hearing loss that I have. And I really depend on watching people's faces when I'm listening. But that's what I was going to point out is I find that just with the work that we're doing is trying to get this into part of our systems. And because I really don't think it's that instructors, or at least people that we work with, it's not that they don't want to, they just don't even, they don't know how, or they haven't recognized that it's a technology that's available yet. Which, you know, when we're working with it every day, we kind of feel like, oh, well, everybody knows it's there. Everybody's heard of UDL. I mean, we've been working with it for so long now, but it's really just, a lot of people just don't know what they don't know. And so, yeah, we're trying, I feel like it's some, and even in my own presentations, luckily I have it automatically set on my PowerPoint, so it's there, because I forget to just turn that on. And so I think it's also just having it working into part of the systems training. I think it's, you know, just having the training to do it. But yeah, I totally agree with everything that you're saying. And I think it's just something that we have to gradually get more, the more of us that are using it, the more it will spread the word, basically, kind of.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, because people notice it. Once you start using it regularly, people notice and they will ask about it or say comment. Not everybody, because not everybody's going to comment, but the more that you can not only say, or not only do it to show it, but say it too. I intentionally caption things. This is how you do it, right? In our meetings and in the work that we do. And for the College of Social Work, you know, they don't have a choice by having me in their college to not caption things. And so every single instructor now in the College of Social Work knows how to turn on captions, but it has taken me all 4 years 4 years to say, open up your PowerPoint, go to slideshow, check the box. Because we just get so used to doing things in a certain way, and we're not aware of the technology that's available to us. And we're so busy. There's so much demand on so many people, and there's so many needs that I understand that it takes time and it takes a while, but it needs to speed up, because the technology is free and it's available and we need to use it. We shouldn't wait to ask. We shouldn't wait until people ask, can you turn on the captions? Can you hit the CC button?
Yeah.
We shouldn't. We should just automatically assume that our world needs more visual cues for multiple reasons, and to just do it.
And it's not just captions either. It's so much other things. You know, I'm thinking of even in K through 12 environments. I mean, it's, you know, what really stood out to me with, I like your graphic because it talks about accommodations and then accessibility. And even with, you know, my children and my son particularly, it's always about accommodations in K through 12 instead of the, you know, and it's it's still in our systems even from that point. And so just changing a little bit of the language, you know, with because somebody has sensory overload. And also even there's also what I guess I would like your opinion on, you know, there is a lot of debate on cameras on, cameras off in an instructional environment, you know, and I'm the one that's like, cameras on. I want to see people. I want to see their mouths. I want to be able to hear them. But I also understand the argument, cameras off, because that's also, you know, it supports inclusivity. If people don't want their environment being shown or bandwidth and things like that. So I think sometimes we have to have flexibility as well with certain subjects.
Yeah, I think that that's key. And I tell my students, when I am presenting my PowerPoint, feel free to have your cameras off. But when I'm looking at you and I'm asking you questions or I'm answering questions, if I don't see you, I'm not having all of the cues that I need. But at the same time, if it's really important to you that your camera's off because of your own needs, I understand that. But I feel like if I say that, then students who just leave their camera off because they just, I don't know, they don't necessarily have a need, but they just don't feel like turning their camera on. Then I'm looking at all of these little black screens, right? These dark screens, and I'm getting no visual input at all. So I don't need everybody to have their cameras on. But if you're engaging with us, we need to be able to see the cues if possible. If most people are turning their cameras on, then it's okay if some people have their cameras off. But if everybody has their camera off, and again, it's not just hearing loss, there's so many different things that are impacted. So I was on the job market this last year, and some of the interviews required that cameras be off because they didn't want to bias. The committee didn't want to be biased on who the person was that they were interviewing. And I'm like, that inclusive for who? Biased for who? Because if I can't see your faces, then I don't know what you're asking or how you're asking it. So that doesn't work for me. So, and that's true for so many things. We have this dual issue, right? There's not a one size fits all for every single person. So flexibility, awareness, let's talk about our individual needs. Let's normalize that our needs are all different, but talk about them. Lots of different things we need to do.
Kristel, I have a quick question. You mentioned earlier that when a YouTube video does not have a closed captioning, the CC is grayed out. So what do we do then when we come across a YouTube video that does not have closed captioning?
So you can add it through that system that you would have to download the video. So if the YouTube will let you download it, some of them you can, some of them you can't. What I found most effective is I embed it in my PowerPoint. So if you embed it in PowerPoint, when you play, PowerPoint will caption it, even though the YouTube video isn't captioned. But if you don't
Okay.
embed it, it's not going to work. But if you embed it, then PowerPoint will do the captioning job for you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm. I appreciate your time today and engaging with me in this topic. And I hope all of you turn on captions in your PowerPoints. I hope all of you have it checked on and that you're able to, in your Zoom also, if any of you don't have your Zoom caption enabled, please, after you hang up off our call, please go enable that feature so that people have the option to use it.
I had to say I enabled my closed captioning because of you. So you made me do it last year.
Well, I'm glad now you always have it on, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Scoresby. I got it this time. Right. Thank you. And for a great session, and congratulations on your defense. And thank you all for being here today. Our next brown bag is on April 14th. And we hope to see you then. In the meantime, have a great weekend.